The President directed the proposed cabinet cluster to ensure that education issues are tackled as a whole system rather than in multi-agency silos. Joining us to discuss how the proposed cabinet cluster for education will address the learning and administrative gaps are Department of Education Secretary Sunny Angara and EDCOM2 Executive Director Carol Mark Yee. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Daphne.
And let's start with Secretary Angara. Go ahead.
Good afternoon to all our members of the media.
In today's cabinet sectoral meeting, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. approved in principle the creation of a cabinet cluster for education. This is to synthesize a common vision and common direction to reform the education system to have a positive long-term effect on every Filipino student and graduate. The President recognizes the urgent need to address this learning crisis that has crippled our education system for decades, resulting in a learning gap of 5.5 years for Filipino students. President Marcos directed the agencies to devise a coherent and system-wide national integrated education and workforce development strategy that starts from early childhood education to basic education, senior high school, and so on. The President directed the proposed cabinet cluster to ensure that education issues are tackled as a whole system rather than in multi-agency silos. Joining us to discuss how the proposed cabinet cluster for education will address the learning and administrative gaps are Department of Education Secretary Sunny Angara and EDCOM2 Executive Director Carol Mark Yee. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Daphne.
And let's start with Secretary Angara. Go ahead.
Good afternoon to all our members of the media. May opening statement, but we're very thankful to the President for his swift action. Actually, it's our first presentation on this. Presentation was made by Directory of the EDCOM. And the President basically sa bandang dulo ng meeting sinabi na niya na in principle he approves of it and he'd like us to fast track some of the actions dahil nakikita niya yung urgency and it's a very deep-seated problem. Kumbaga medyo matagal-tagal na kailangan tugunan. So yun, ano sabi niya talagang kailangan itong cluster pero wag tayo, parang sinabi niya na wag tayo tumigil dyan just because the cluster is just a coordinating mechanism, di ba? We need to follow through with yung pangangailangan sa bawat sector from early child development sa mga daycare centers to kindergarten up to K-12 up to college up to tech voc. Lahat yun dapat sabi niya may positive interventions tayo for our learners.
Thank you, Secretary Angara. Executive Director Yee, would you like to walk us through a little bit of what you presented so that the media can know about it?
Right. So, yung proposal po kasi ng EDCOM was to create a cabinet cluster for education. If you've seen a report, the Miseducation, the failed system of Philippine education, the insight really was all of the agencies are doing their respective jobs, but they do it independent of one another with no mechanism of really coordinating, making sure that the plans come together and they deliver an integrated system of education. Tulad ng sinabi namin kanina, ang isang bata na tinrain sa early childhood, dapat may maayos na nutrition, may early education, tsaka stimulation. Papasok, pupunta yan sa Deped. Pagdating sa Deped, kailangan may literacy and numeracy. Tapos pag nag-graduate ng high school, dapat employable. Nakikita natin ngayon na kanya-kanyang agency, kanya-kanyang trabaho, pero hindi nagtutugma. So, for example, yung learning gap na pinoproblema natin ngayon, 5.5 years ang kulang sa isang bawat Pilipinong graduate. Anong ibig sabihin nito? Sabi nga namin, nagpunta kami sa isang high school during the learning camp ng Deped. Yung mga batang pinapanood namin sa learning camp, hirap silang mag-subtract. Grade 8 students sila. Buong buwan, inaral nila addition and subtraction and they struggled to subtract. we asked them about multiplication, and I gave examples, which is really what I asked the students. Sabi ko, 3 times 3, 0 times 0, 10 times 10. Hindi kaya. Pagpasok nila nung July 29, ang lessons nila is quadratic functions, algebra. How will you solve all of those concerns? Hindi lamang siya problema ng Deped kasi nakita namin sa iba't ibang issues. For example, early childhood. The data shows us that if you have access to early childhood education from 3 to 4, yung score sa PISA tumataas ng 32 points. So, ang laki ng impact. But yung participation natin in early childhood, 33% lamang. And pag tinignan natin yung daycare teachers and workers, wala palang program sa TESDA or CHED to train them. But you have 79,000 of them. Ang na-train ng ECCD Council for the past year, since 2011, 1,000 per year. 12,000 cumulative, 15% out of the universe of 79,000. Second, we found data that pagdating sa high school teachers natin, the bulk of our science teachers, 50% of them did not finish a course related to science, not in science. How will you teach something you did not know yourself? 107 out of 113 SUCs natin nag-o-offer ng secondary education. Ang maganda sanang magawa, itugma yun sa pangailangan ng Deped schools kung nasaan sila, hindi ba? And then yung third natin, yung guidance counseling, we are the bullying capital of the world based on PISA because the highest prevalence of bullying and then loneliness sa Pilipinas nangyayari. Ang gumagawa ng trabaho na to based on the Anti-Bullying Act as implemented is yung guidance counselor. Pero yung vacancies natin sa Deped, almost 5,000. Plantilla positions ng guidance counselors, wala. Yun pala, pag tinignan mo, wala namang nag-o-offer ng Masters in Guidance Counseling all over the country. Yung average graduation numbers, 300 per year. To fill all of the vacancies, it will take us 14 years by the current setup. So malinaw that DepEd, of course, has to do its work in terms of resolving the learning crisis, but it's not something that it could achieve on its own. Kailangan tulungan talaga yung agencies. Malaki yung ginagampanan ng CHED and TESDA, and it's really the National Education and Workforce Development Plan that is long-term, that will anchor them all to make sure that there is one coherent direction. And that is what we propose to the President. A cabinet cluster that will come together, first and foremost, to formulate a 10-year integrated National Education and Workforce Development Plan. And then second, to make sure that the agency targets and budgets are aligned to support this plan every year. Kasi pag hindi natin ginawa ito, 10 years yung laban natin eh. Because yung mga batang pumapasok ng kinder ngayon, kailan pa sila mag-grade 3, 4 years from now? Kailan sila mag-high school? Kailan sila magka-college? Kailangan tuloy-tuloy yung reforms because if it is interrupted, bagsak na naman tayo. So mahalagang mahalaga yung gagampanan ng cluster, and we are grateful to the President for really seeing this very quickly. Sabi niya, we don't have a system. We have different things happening but not working together. We need to fix that, and we are very grateful for his leadership and putting his support behind this proposal and to his commitment to see this through.
Okay, thank you. Let's open the floor to questions. Okay. Alvin Baltasar, Radyo Pilipinas.
Secretary, magandang umaga po. Secretary, ano po yung magiging composition ng cabinet cluster? Meaning, ano yung mga areas of concentration na bubuuin natin dito sa cluster na ito?
Yung tatlong ahensya ng edukasyon, yung DepEd, Commission on Higher Education o CHED, at saka yung TESDA, o yung sa at saka kasama rin dyan yung DOLE or Department of Labor, at saka DBM, parang dahil pag pinag-uusapan ay pondo para sa edukasyon, usually na pag-uusapan yan pero hiwa-hiwalay eh. So ngayon, at least yung mga issue na tagpi-tagpi sa mga ahensya, mapag-uusapan itong cluster. So yung nabanggit ni Director KME na yung sa bullying, yung mga teacher kasi, yung mga teaching graduates natin, ang nagsusupervise niyan is CHED dahil meron tayong kukuha sila ng college degree sa education at papasa sila ng LET or licensure exam. Pero 90+% niyan ay napupunta sa Deped ng graduates. So, yung sinasabi ni KM na wala tayong science teachers or kalahati ng science teachers natin hindi graduate or walang specialization sa science, yun ay isang dapat pag-usapan nitong cabinet cluster. Yung kakulangan ng guidance counselors, halos 5,000 yung bakanteng posisyon tulad ng sinabi niya ngayon kanina dahil ginawang licensure para maging isang guidance counselor nasa batas na kailangan magka-master's degree ka dun sa pagiging guidance counselor. So, number 1, yun ang problema. So, dun sa nakikita natin sa isang rehiyon lamang, may 300 posisyon sa DepEd na bakante, ang graduates 0. So, talagang ano yung mangyayari dun sa mga estudyante natin. So, sa ngayon, meron tayong temporary solution na pag-uusapan ng Civil Service Commission, ng DepEd, ng Commission on Higher Education na sana punan muna yung mga bakante, yung 5,000 bakanting posisyon ng mga kahit graduates ng guidance counseling and psychology or whatever specialization. Pero hindi na kailangan yung master's degree, parang bigyan sila ng palugit o 5 taon para makuha nila yung necessary credentials. At the same time, meron tayong effort sa mga mambabatas na tanggalin na natin yon kasi nasa batas yun eh. Yun na nagpapahirap dito sa yun, nakalagay na to be a licensed guidance counselor, you must have a master's degree. So, ang hirap dun di ba? Kasi to be a teacher, you only need a bachelor degree. You don't need a master's degree, di ba?
Secretary, kailangan natin ng guidance counselor. Pero magkano yung budget na pinag-uusapan natin dito?
Ay, ito, existing budget na to, Alvin, no?
Yeah.
Bakante lang talaga yung posisyon. Ibig sabihin, na-budgetan na yan. Wala lang talagang tao na pwedeng mag-fill ng posisyon. So, no additional budget needed here. Oh.
One last, doon sa sinabi ni Director Mark kanina, medyo nakaka-alarm ba yung kung meron tayong job mismatch, apparently meron tayong teaching mismatch, Direct Mark eh. Yung isang science teacher, hindi pala tinapos niya ay science. Gaano kinakailangan ba natin ng realignment or paano natin ayusin ito?
Sa EDCOM naman, madalas na kami nag-uusap ng DepEd and sabi nga nila, nilinaw na nila yung hiring kasi pag nag-job posting tayo, ang nilalagay kadalasan, looking for or hiring teacher 1, graduate of elementary, secondary. Hindi nila sinasabi na yung vacancy pala namin math, vacancy pala namin science. Kailangan ilagay para alam ng graduate, ito yung natapos ko, pwede akong mag-apply, ako yung kailangan nila. Kasi ngayon, generic yung mga posting, walang emphasis sa specialization.
Salamat po.
Okay. Eden Santos, at 25.
Secretary, mo nakakabahala po yung ating learning crisis, ano? Tapos, we're 14 years ba? Tama po yung kailangan natin itong
tuloy-tuloy.
Para tuloy-tuloy. 5.5 years yung education gap. Isa po sa nabanggit ninyo yung mga sinabi ni Executive Director Yi. Ano pa po ba yung mga hakbangin na nakahandang gawin ng departamento sa ilalim po ng inyong pangangasiwa para po itong learning crisis na ito ay matugunan po natin at yung mga mag-aaral natin talagang tumaas po yung quality education na kanilang nakukuha sa pag-aaral po.
Well, unang-una sa lahat, Eden, yung learning delivery natin. Anong ibig sabihin ng learning delivery? Ano yung binibigay natin sa mga estudyante? Yung libro ba natin, dumadating ba on time, di ba? Meron ba siyang hinahawakan na kung hindi libro, learning sheet? So, yung quality of inputs sa education. Yung classroom ba natin, masikip ba siya? May bullying ba siya? So, yun yung mga basics, yun yung pinag-uusapan, yung basics. Kunin muna natin, gawin natin, ituwid natin yung mga basic conditions for optimal learning delivery ng ating mga estudyante. May marunong ba sila mag-computer? Di ba? Kasi yung mga exams, karamihan computer na yan. So, nangyari natin sa nakaraan, unang beses makakita ng bata ng computer, araw na ng exam. So, ma-imagine mo lang ano yung naging sitwasyon niya. Siguro nagkaroon siya ng konting panic dun sa sa kanya. At pangalawa, yung link up namin with industries for senior high school. Yan yung bili ni Pangulo na kailangan maganda yung chance niya makakuha ng trabaho at hindi lang pangkaraniwang trabaho, kundi yung dekalidad na trabaho na maganda yung sweldo at makakabuhay ng isang tao at kanyang pamilya. Pangatlo, yung pagtitrain ng ating teachers, yung continuing training ng ating teachers. Importante po yan. Meron naman tayong trainings pero parang ang comment ng EDCOM is hindi natin sinusukat yung ating progress, yung progreso natin, yung assessment system natin. So yun ang isang gagawin ko sa Deped. Maglalagay tayo ng assessment at every stage of programs. Sinusukat talaga natin. Meaning, saan sila sa umpisa, saan sila sa dulo. Naging epektibo ba yung ating interventions. So ito lang yung basics na inutos sa atin ng Pangulo. Pero yung learning delivery, and then fourth is yung pag-rationalize ng senior high school curriculum. Sa ngayon, 22 subjects ang kinukuha ng isang senior high school student. Papasok sa grade 11, kukuha siya kagad. Whether ang pinili niya, may track kasi yan, di ba? Meron tayong technical vocational track or TVL track. Meron tayong academic track. Ibig sabihin, magka-college yung bata. Meron tayong arts track and sports track. Pero lahat ng apat na yon, kukuha ka ng 22 subjects. Yung pananaliksik sa Pilipino, yung earth sciences. So, siguro, ang gusto natin, medyo bawas-bawasan natin yon. Kasi nakikita natin around the world, may sa Inglaterra, 3 to 4 subjects lang yan. Sa Australia, 6 subjects lang yan. Sa Amerika, 6 to 7 subjects lang ang senior high school. Sa atin, 22. So, gagawa tayo ng, hindi natin sila babawasan na kukunin nila, pero gagawin nating voluntary or elective na lang siya. So, gagawa tayo ng core for all 4 tracks na common, na yun ang kahit anong gawin ng bata, he's well equipped. May reading and writing skills siya, may communication skills siya, may personal development or soft skills siya, may physical education siya. So, he's a well-rounded person kahit anong gawin niya. At may foundational skills siya. Pero yung electives niya, dapat akma dun sa pipiliin niya. Yun ang ilan sa mga pwede nating gawin.
Ivan Mayrina, GMA 7.
Yeah, either of the two gentlemen can answer. Yung sa bullying, are we able to quantify the effect of bullying on academic performance? Say, a victim of bullying is X times more likely to fail a subject or something like that.
Yes. Lumabas naman sa CPLM tsaka sa PISA na yung laging nabubully, talagang bagsak yung points nila in math, science, and reading. Malaki yung impact talaga niya. And yung data pa nga natin is not just bullying. Tulad ng nabanggit ni Presidente, may nabasa siyang article na may Singapore study that says that the loneliest students in the world are Filipinos. And that is also in the PISA data. The Filipino students feel that they don't belong and they are the loneliest. Talagang, sabi niya, find nga the study kasi talagang nabasa din niya and it made an imprint on him. Then we really need to address this kasi yung school environment, kung hindi mo feel na safe ka doon, paano ka magpo-focus sa pag-aaral mo, di ba? Kung lagi kang naghihintay ng paraan para madepensahan ng sarili mo.
May binilin si Pangulo Ivan na kahit wala tayong or marami tayong bakanting guidance counselor, dapat sinasalo pa rin nung ibang member ng faculty. O minsan sabi niya, nung ako, estudyante ako, may teacher na lumapit sa akin at sinabi, akong responsable sa iyo, pag may problema ka, pwede mo akong lapitan. Parang gano'n, may toka, may mentoring, may toka, may life coach. So yun ang isa ring tututukan namin going forward pursuant to the instructions of the President na make sure may lifeline sila, kumbaga. Pagka nangangailangan sila, they have someone to turn to. May malalapitan sila.
Marami din pong nangyayaring bullying sa social media and other digital platforms. Are we also exploring the possibility of, say, perhaps limiting exposure to, so I don't know, paano ko ba na doon din tayo mag-focus sa digital bullying?
Well, bullying, whether cyberbullying, bawal talaga yan, no? We should, ang problema nga, nabanggit ni Director Yi dun sa kanyang presentation kay Pangulo kanina, is that many schools, ang nakalagay kasi sa anti-bullying law, which we authored, Congressman pa tayo, is that each school is required to have an anti-bullying policy. Pero hindi sinasabi ng batas kung how strict they have to be, pero kailangan may policy sila. Pero ang problema, on the ground, very few schools have their own anti-bullying policy. So, siguro, sa Deped, we will really track or monitor the compliance dito sa batas na to. At, meron talaga tayong existing, hindi ako nag-issue niyan, pero even in the past, may policy ang Deped na bawal ang smartphones and cell phones in the classroom. And part of the teacher's duty is to explain to students yung proper use of technology and cell phones. Meaning, kasama dun siguro yung learning to deal critically with news, di ba? Hindi lahat ng mabasa mo tama. Tapos also is observing good manners and right conduct. Hindi lang sa personal dealings mo, pati through technology.
Okay. Leth Narciso, DZRH.
Sec, yung classroom shortage, matagal na po kasi natin itong problema. Pero hanggang ngayon, kulang pa rin tayo, may siksikan sa mga klase at ilang shifts yung klase nila. Ano na po bang ginagawa dito?
Tama ka. I think a decade ago, it was siguro mga nasa 75,000. Now it's 159,000. So, parang whatever we're doing, it's not very effective. So, I think there are things that we should look at in terms of speeding up procurement. Meaning, tawag nila dyan, early procurement activities or EPA. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa pasado yung budget for 2025, for example, pero the early procurement for the building of classrooms, ginagawa na natin yon. Anong ibig sabihin nun? You're already looking at the school sites na possible na ifa-fund under the GAA or budget of 2025. Tinitingnan mo yung school sites, what can they accommodate? You're doing the soil testing. If it's a tall building, sino-soil test mo na yan. Tinitingnan mo, pinag-aralan mo na yung legal angles on kung titled ba siya sa pangalan ng eskwelahan. Kasi may ganyang sitwasyon sa probinsya. Hindi pala titulado sa eskwelahan pero nagko-construct na sila doon. So there are several issues that come into play. Kasi ginagawa natin in the past, tsaka lang umpisahan yan sa January kapag pasado na yung budget. So ngayon, we want to fast track it. Siguro, pag alam more or less, may kasunduan na sa Congress na ito yung ipopondohan nila. This is the amount appropriated for this so-and-so number of classrooms. Yun, by sana earlier than third quarter, umpisa na namin yung pre-award. Yun ang ginagawa kasi ng DPWH, kaya sila mabilis. January, nagko-construct na sila. Because they do all activities short of award in pre-January. So once napasa na yung budget, na sila? Award na sila. And construct. After awarding the contract to the winning bidder, nagko-construct na sila. Napansin ko sa Deped, kakapasok ko lang ng Hulyo, hindi pa kami nagko-construct for the budget of 2024 for certain areas. So that's why mababa historically ang tinatawag na obligation rate or disbursement rate or construction rate ng Deped with classrooms because constructing classrooms is a little more complicated than constructing a road. There is more work to be done beforehand. So that's the first. Secondly, bubuhayin natin yung Adapt a School kasi yon talaga has been proven very effective in mobilizing the private sector kasi may insentibo siya doon, yung may tax deduction siya doon mababawas niya sa kinita niya or sa income tax niya yung ibibigay niyang classroom, yung halaga nung ibibigay niyang classroom. So that's one. And then pangatlo, to address nga yung shifting, tinitingnan natin yung kasi hindi naman natin magagawa yung all these classrooms overnight or in a matter of a few years. Some are talagang ang laki nung shortage. So we want to do the blended learning. So improve namin yung blended learning kasi may nababalitaan nga kami, may eskwelahan na once a week lang pumapasok yung mga bata. So paano naman yun kung ganun? Dapat at least during the other days of the week meron siyang maayos na blended learning setup. So So yun ang dyan papasok yung state of internet access nung bata, yung pagkakaroon niya ng isang device na magagamit niya at madadownload dun yung kanyang learning materials. At maybe even real-time teaching. Yung kahit wala siya sa classroom, nakikita niya yung teacher niya at may interaction sila online.
Okay. Melvin Gascon, Philippine Daily Inquirer.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Any of the gentlemen can also respond. Doon po sa bagong create na cabinet cluster on education, I noticed, I may be wrong, pero hindi ko po napansin yung participation ng DSWD. Ang context po noon is, we know that a large percentage of our children go through yung early child care development program ng DSWD. Naipasok po ba sa program na ito yung DSWD for a more holistic approach to education? Thank you.
TWG.
Yeah. In our presentation to the President, actually, it also included ECCD Council, of which kasama doon ng DSWD, and also in the technical working groups that we proposed, we identified the resource persons that are relevant for each of those. Bahagi doon yung DSWD rin. Kasi, as you said, napakahalaga niya. And in fact, in our presentation to the President, the best investment you can make in education is in early childhood. And doon, hindi lang siya Deped, pati DSWD, tsaka DOH, tsaka National Nutrition Council. Kasi yung problema mo, hindi lamang edukasyon, pati stunting. Dapat magkatugma yung interventions natin. So, kasama dapat doon.
Very good suggestion actually kasi number one, yung gutom, di ba? Yung issue ng hunger. At pangalawa, yung poverty issue. Pag ang choice is bibili ng libro o bibili ng pagkain, medyo malala yun. So, tama yun. So, tama as Director Yee said, kasama yun sa technical working groups. And also for DTI, for instance, inisip namin kung isasama namin. Kasi meron silang skills framework, meron silang mga new industries na pwedeng bigyan ng courses for the education. Pero kasama sila, kung hindi sila kasama sa council mismo, doon sila sa technical working groups kasama.
May mga nare-receive po kaming reports from all over the country. Doon po sa exodus ng mga public school teachers, primarily language teachers. Ang number one destination po nila ngayon, US. So, ano po or have we recognized this as sort of a problem, and what do we intend to do about it? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a real problem, Melvin, no? Napansin ko or na-report sa akin na maraming nag-iimbita sa ating mga teachers for study tours. Ang problema sa tour, hindi na sila bumabalik. So, hindi lang sa US, kundi sa ibang bansa. So, medyo babantayan namin yan. At pag-aaralan din namin siguro yung ano yung factors for them leaving. I think dun sa initial study namin, one of the factors for our teachers leaving is the lack of maayos na career progression. So nag-issue kami ng pursuant to the instruction of the President in his SONA. One of the major memoranda we signed is the career progression, expanded career progression. Anong ibig sabihin yan? Yung teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3, minsan it takes 15 years na sa teacher 2 or teacher 3 pa siya. Kasi hindi na pro-promote yung mga nasa taas. So gumawa kami ng expanded career progression with the help of EDCOM, with the help of Civil Service Commission, PRC, and DBM, na we added positions. Nagdagdag kami ng mga teaching positions para mas mabilis yung pag-akyat ng mga teachers natin. Hindi sila tatagal yung sinabi ni Presidente na wala nang magre-retire na teacher 1. Definitely, dahil mas mabilis na yung akyat sa teacher 4, teacher 5, teacher 6. At kahit nag-principal na siya, pwede pa rin siya magturo. Kasi yun ang ibang nangyayari. Kaya umaalis din. Dahil nagiging panay admin na yung trabaho ng isang teacher. Hindi niya nagagamit yung vocation niya or na yung passion niya for teaching. Hindi na niya nailalabas or nai-exercise. So, yun. Those are some of the reasons that we've tried to address. Pero we'll try to do more.
Okay. Chona Yu, People's Journal.
Sir, yung matatag curriculum, tuloy pa rin po ba yun at ano yung mga amendments na gagawin nyo kung meron man?
Yes, yung matatag curriculum naman is a pilot, no? Meaning sabihin, dito, nasa grades 1, 4, and 7 na siya. So, next year, grades 2, 3, 5, and 8. So, meron tayong in-issue na department order dyan, setting forth the curriculum. Pero marami na rin kaming komento na na-receive dyan. So, magiging sensitibo naman tayo dyan sa mga comments. Minsan, sabi nila, dikit-dikit masyado yung subjects, masyadong mabilis yung subjects, 45 minutes. Some are suggesting 6 1-hour classes rather than 8 45-minute classes. So, we're studying this kasi it's not easy rin to match the teachers. Medyo mahirap din yung human resource aspect niyan. But kami, nakikinig kami, and whatever the consensus is, we'll try to adapt the recommendations going forward. No? Kung maganda yung recommendation, at saka meron naman tayong variation on the ground. Kung talagang dikit-dikit yung klase ni teacher, pwede naman sabihin ni principal, magpahinga ka muna, maglagay tayo ng break dyan, di ba? Hindi naman tayo tali talaga dun sa nakalagay sa curriculum. We'll allow certain regions, certain schools, certain divisions and districts na may kanya-kanyang innovations din on the ground.
Okay. Tuesday New, DZBB.
Good morning, sir.
Morning po.
Secretary, mukhang masalimuot pa yung problema ng kakulangan natin sa guidance counselor. 5,000 plus po yung kulang pa, considering mayroon naman pong budget, kanyo kanina. Pero in the meantime, sir, dahil kailangan natin itong mga guidance counselors na ito, ano po ang immediate na solution na pwedeng gawin? Will you be issuing a department order for school administrators or district supervisors para mapunan kahit papano yung kakulangan?
Dati kasi, hindi pumapayag yung sino ba?
CSC.
Civil Service Commission na punuin yung position ng hindi walang master's degree dahil yun na nakalagay sa batas. Pero ngayon, tumulong ang EDCOM, tumulong ang CHED at ang CSC na magkaroon tayo ng solusyon dahil nakita nila malubha yung problema ng pagkabakante ng mga libu-libong guidance counselor positions. So ngayon, kahit walang master's degree, graduate, may bachelor's degree, pwede nang umupo dyan. Basta in the next 5 years, makuha niya yung necessary qualification na master's degree. At pangalawa, you want to say? Yung second, yung mag-aaral, may recommended amendment naman kami sa batas para hindi naman gaano ka-stricto yung rekomendasyon. At pangatlo, siguro sa Deped, sa panig ng Deped, gagawa kami ng career path tulad ng ginawa namin sa teachers para hindi mag-alisan din. Kasi sa ngayon, mababa ang item for guidance counselors, nasa salary grade 11. So that's the equivalent of a teacher 1. Tapos magma-master's degree siya.
May license.
Tapos ang makukuha lang niya, teacher 1 position, di ba? Ang sweldo, 27, 28,000, mga ganon. So, bakit pa siya nag-masters, di ba? So, yun ang things on the ground that we're looking at. We will correct it. Ambusin namin yun. At saka, syempre, may career path din siya para hindi tayo mawala ng guidance counselor. Kasi sa nangyayari, yung ibang guidance counselor, gusto na lang maging administrator or something. Dahil doon, na-promote sila, they will get a bigger salary, di ba?
Okay. Thank you. Catherine Valiente, Manila Times.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, speaking of budget, Vice President Sara Duterte claimed that the 2024 budget was mishandled, and she tried though to correct it, but the some government agencies did not support it. Do you agree with this, and how do we address such issues po? Thank you.
Well, wala kasing specifics yun, so hindi ko sure ano yung ibig niyang sabihin. Mahirap na magkomento, baka hindi yun ang pinag-uusapan, di ba? So, basta ako nakikita ko yung efforts ni Presidente talaga dito sa education, and ang bilis nga niya mag-decide dito sa cabinet cluster. At nandun talaga yung urgency at very specific yung kanyang recommendations. So, tingin ko on the part of the administration, wala naman pagkukulang, especially when it comes to education. Although, dapat mas mabilis yung reforma, I think is what the President is telling us. So.
I'll add lang to what Secretary Angara said, no? Kasi sabi nga ni Presidente kanina, sige, create natin tong cluster na to, pero yung problema natin, may 68 interagency bodies based on our report kasi na ina-attenda ng mga agencies. Imagine mo, 68 iba-ibang councils, iba-ibang groups na kailangan nilang attendan ng meetings every time, that on top of their regular job. Sabi niya, let's create a cluster but let's figure out how we could rationalize this because it's really unrealistic. Kasi hindi tayo makakapag-focus talaga on education kung ganitong karaming iba't ibang concerns na iba-ibang kailangang attendan pero tigigisang concerns, very siloed instead of coherent.
Dagdag ko rin dun sa sinabi ni Director. Sinabi pa nga ng Presidente, siguro lahat ng council na yan may budget yan. So, siguro kung hindi na kailangan, luma na yan, tanggalin na natin yan. Kahit batas pa man yan, mag-recommend na kayo ng amyenda at para makatipid din ang ating gobyerno at madala natin sa mga kinakailangan mga reforma.
Okay.
Sir, wala talagang mishandling of budget sa tingin niyo po.
Hindi ko na alam yung mga nanauna sa akin kasi mambabatas ako nun di ba?
Pero sir, titignan ng Department of Education kung ano ba yung naging problema, bakit.
Well, makikita natin sa mga COA reports yan. It's the COA who really knows if there was mishandling. So, pagharap namin sa Kongreso, usually mga tinatanong sa amin, sa House of Representatives, sa Senado, tinatanong yung mga COA reports. Those are the reports that will indicate if there has been any mishandling or not.
Okay. Jinky Baticados, IBC 13.
Hi, sir. Good afternoon po. Hi, sir. Sir, si Senator Gatchalian, he pushes po for major revamps of NLRP natin, no, the National Learning Recovery Program. So, how do you answer this one, sir?
Tanong natin kay Kim, siya yung bumubulong kay Senator Gatchalian. Tama yun. I think we need to review. Hindi nga natin sinusukat kasi minsan. Hindi natin sinukat saan yung bata before the learning recovery camp, tapos after. Para talagang scientific yung at evidence-based natin. Kung talagang gumagana siya ng mabuti or para ipagpatuloy ba ito or hindi. So, I'll let KM say more about that kasi that pertains to Deped and they reviewed it specifically.
Oo nga eh. So, talagang tinutukan kasi ng EDCOM yung National Learning Recovery Program, no? So, talagang binantayan namin pati Catch-up Fridays, yung NRP, NMP, tsaka yung learning camps over the summer. I guess yung pinaka-push kasi sana and request for Deped to consider is how to treat our learners differently based on their ability. Kasi nakita namin sa learning camp, iba-iba yung tipo ng estudyante. I think Deped's own data so far estimates that about 30% of our grade 7 to 10, ang problema, functional literacy and numeracy eh. Iba yun sa grade level ability. Meaning to say, kung kaya mo mag-compute, yung mga basic na pangailangan mo sa pamumuhay, kaya mong gawin, kaya mong basahin ang mga texts, okay na yun. Kailangan at least yun meron. Pero ang question natin, kunyari, yung in-explain ko kanina, grade 9 yung bata ngayon. Ang kaya lang niya subtraction. Anong plano natin sa kanya ngayong taon na araw-araw nasa classroom siya, quadratic functions yung aaralin niya? Kasi kung may 30 minutes tayo na national math program at the end of each day, sapat ba yun para maihabol niya yung multiplication, division, at lahat ng iba't ibang lesson sa pagitan nun, which is the 5-year learning gap? Yung request namin sa DepEd is sana yung plano natin detalyado, depende sa pangangailangan ng iba't ibang bata. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng bata ganun yung kailangan. Yung iba kailangan mas focused, mas maraming oras. Yung iba refreshments lang. So sana meron tayong delineation in terms of the interventions.
Okay. We have to wrap up our press briefing. Thank you so much, ED Yi and Secretary Angara, for communicating the very urgent directives of the President. Education reforms will take time, but we have to continue. It's an ongoing and long-term process. So thank you for explaining the concept of the special the cabinet cluster on education.
Thank you.
Kasama sa media. Thank you.
Thank you, Malacanang Press Corps. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Kung meron man kayong mga komento tungkol sa mga isyong ito, maaari kayong magbigay ng mga reaksyon sa comment section na makikita sa ibaba ng bidyong ito. Maraming salamat, at kung ikaw ay interesado ng mga bidyong tulad nito, mangyaring suportahan ang channel na ito sa pamamagitan ng pagpindot ng like, pag-share ng mga video, at kung bago ka pa lang sa channel na ito, please subscribe sa channel na ito at pindutin ang notification bell at piliin ang all upang maabisuhan ka para sa mga paparating pang mga videos.